When security changes happen, the hard part is often not deciding what to change, but making sure everyone actually understands the change and behaves differently because of it. That sounds obvious, but it is exactly where many well-intended security programs fall apart, especially in large or busy organizations where people are juggling priorities and do not wake up thinking about policy. A change that lives only in an email attachment or a shared folder is not really a change at all, because behavior does not shift automatically. To make updates stick, communication has to be planned like any other security control, with an audience, a message, a method, and a way to tell whether it worked. The goal is not to flood people with alerts or to sound strict and dramatic, but to reduce confusion and help everyone make the new, safer choice without friction. That means we treat organization-wide communication as part of the security lifecycle, not as an afterthought, and we do it in a way that respects how people actually absorb information and adjust habits. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is a companion to our course companion books. The first book is about the exam and provides detailed information on how to pass it best. The second book is a Kindle-only ebook that contains 1,000 flashcards that can be used on your mobile device or Kindle. Check them both out at cyberauthor.me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. A strong starting point is to separate three things that often get mixed together: the reason for the change, the exact behavior expected, and the practical impact on daily work. People can usually accept a new rule if they understand what problem it solves and what they need to do differently, but they cannot act on vague language like be more secure or follow best practices. You want to translate the update into a clear mental picture of the before and after. Before, people did a certain thing, maybe sharing files a certain way or approving access in a certain way. After, they do it differently, and the organization gets a measurable reduction in risk. That translation work is where security educators earn their value, because it turns abstract governance into practical behavior. When the message is clear, people can comply without guessing, and when guessing goes away, accidental noncompliance drops fast. Clarity is a security control because it reduces the chance that normal, well-meaning employees become the weak link simply due to confusion. Knowing your audience is not a marketing trick, it is a risk management step, because different groups interpret the same message in different ways. Executives care about impact, accountability, and the story they need to tell the board or stakeholders. Managers care about how work gets done, how to coach their teams, and whether the change will slow delivery or increase rework. Individual contributors care about what to do today, what to stop doing, and how to avoid getting in trouble while still meeting deadlines. Technical teams care about how the change affects systems, workflows, approvals, and support load. If you communicate one generic message to everyone, you will meet nobody where they are, and you will accidentally train people to ignore security updates as background noise. Instead, the organization-wide part can be the umbrella statement, but it should be paired with role-relevant versions that translate expectations into context. When each group sees their world reflected in the message, adoption becomes more natural and less adversarial. Another key concept is to choose the right communication objective for the maturity of the change. Some updates are awareness updates, where you want people to know something has changed and where to find details. Some are behavior change updates, where you want people to do something differently starting now, such as using a new approval path or adopting a new classification rule. Some are enforcement updates, where you are announcing that a control will begin blocking an old behavior after a certain date. Each objective needs a different tone and level of instruction. An awareness update can be short and calm, while a behavior change update needs examples, and an enforcement update needs a timeline and support options so people do not feel ambushed. When you match the message to the objective, you prevent two common mistakes: over-explaining trivial updates and under-explaining impactful ones. Both mistakes reduce trust because they make security communication feel either noisy or careless. Timing is part of communication quality, because a perfect message delivered at the wrong time can still fail. If you announce changes during peak business cycles, people will skim and postpone, and postponement is often the same as non-adoption. If you announce too early with no action required, people will forget by the time it matters. If you announce too late, the first experience people have will be friction or failure, such as blocked access or a rejected request. The best approach is usually stage communication that aligns with readiness. First, a heads up that frames why the change is coming and when, then a practical message closer to the effective date that tells people exactly what to do, and then a follow-up once the change is live that addresses common questions and reinforces the new normal. This staged approach respects how memory works and how busy workdays are, and it gives people time to adjust without feeling surprised. It also gives security teams a chance to learn from early feedback and correct confusion before it becomes widespread. The way you write matters because security language can accidentally create resistance. If your message sounds like punishment, people will either tune out or work around it, and workarounds create new risk. If your message sounds like vague encouragement, people will not know what to do and will fall back to old habits. The sweet spot is firm but respectful language that treats the listener as competent and busy. You explain the reason, state the expectation, and offer the simplest path to compliance, all without sounding sarcastic or threatening. You can also reduce resistance by naming what you know people are worried about, such as extra time or interruptions, and then showing how the new process is designed to be predictable. When people feel seen, they are more likely to participate. That is not about being soft. It is about lowering friction so the organization can actually adopt the control you worked hard to design. Examples are one of the most powerful tools for adoption because they turn rules into decisions. Instead of describing a policy in abstract terms, you show a normal situation and the correct action. For example, if the update changes how sensitive data is shared, you can describe a simple scenario like sending a document to a partner and explain the safe method, the reason it is safe, and what to do if the safe method is not available. The point is not to create an endless list of cases, but to select a few representative examples that cover the most common situations and the riskiest ones. This helps beginners because it reduces anxiety and guesswork. People often fear that one wrong click will get them in trouble, so they either avoid action or improvise. Good examples reduce that fear, which makes adoption smoother. In practice, a couple of clear examples can prevent hundreds of help requests and dozens of mistakes. Channel choice is another place where security updates often go wrong. Many organizations rely on a single channel, like email, and assume that sending equals communicating. In reality, different channels serve different purposes. Email works well for formal notices and reference material, but it is easy to miss, and it competes with everything else. Short internal posts work well for visibility, but can lack detail. Team meetings work well for context and questions, but can be inconsistent across groups. Training modules work well for accountability, but can feel heavy if used too often. The best strategy is usually to use multiple channels in a coordinated way, where one message is the source of truth and the other channels point back to it. The goal is consistency without repetition fatigue. When people hear the same core message in the places they already work, the change begins to feel like part of normal operations rather than a separate security campaign. Consistency also depends on having one authoritative version of the update that does not drift as it spreads. Drift happens when managers paraphrase, when teams create their own notes, or when people repeat what they think they heard. Over time, the organization can end up with multiple versions of the rule, which creates inconsistent behavior and conflict during audits or incident reviews. To prevent drift, you need a single reference location that is easy to access and written clearly, and you need to make sure every message points to that same location. You also want to control terminology so people do not invent alternate names that confuse newcomers. When terminology stays stable, communication becomes easier because each update builds on the last. In a program context, this is how you create a shared language for security across the organization. Shared language reduces errors, reduces arguments, and makes improvements easier to adopt later. Adoption improves when communication includes support pathways, because change creates questions, and unanswered questions become delays or workarounds. If you announce a new process but do not say where to go for help, people will ask whoever is nearby, and they may get incorrect answers. A good update includes an explicit help route that matches the organization's normal habits, such as a help desk path, a security mailbox, or a standard internal request method. You also want to set expectations for response time and what information to include so the help process is efficient. Even in beginner-friendly environments, people appreciate knowing what to do if they get stuck. Support pathways are not just customer service. They are risk reduction because they keep users from solving security problems on their own in ways you cannot see. The easier you make it to ask the right question, the less likely people are to take shortcuts that undermine the control. Measurement is the final piece that turns communication into something you can improve instead of guessing about. You can measure awareness through simple signals like message reach and engagement, but the more meaningful measure is behavior change. Did the number of policy exceptions go up or down? Did the number of incorrect requests drop after clarification? Did incidents related to the old behavior decrease? Did approval times stay within an acceptable range? Those indicators tell you whether your update was understood and adopted, not merely delivered. If the metrics show confusion, the answer is often to revise communication rather than to blame users. Maybe the message was too long. Maybe the expectation was unclear, or maybe the change created friction that people could not absorb. In mature programs, communication is treated like an iterative control with feedback loops, not a one-time broadcast. It also helps to anticipate common misconceptions and address them directly, because misconceptions are predictable and repeat across organizations. One misconception is that security updates are only for technical staff, so non-technical employees ignore them. Another is that policy is optional until someone enforces it, which creates a culture of waiting for enforcement rather than adopting by default. Another is that security changes are arbitrary, which reduces trust and increases resistance. You can counter these by explaining impact in plain terms and showing that the change is tied to real risk and real outcomes. You can also clarify what is not changing, because people often fear hidden scope, like thinking a new rule will suddenly require extra approvals for everything. By naming boundaries, you reduce anxiety. Clear boundaries and clear expectations together make the update feel manageable rather than overwhelming. Leaders and managers play a special role in adoption because they create local norms, and local norms often beat formal policies in daily behavior. If managers do not understand the change, they cannot reinforce it, and they may unintentionally coach people to ignore it in the name of speed. A good organization-wide update equips managers with what they need: the why, the expected behaviors, the timeline, and a simple way to answer common questions. It also helps to encourage managers to model the behavior themselves, because people notice what leaders do more than what they say. When managers treat security updates as part of doing good work, adoption becomes smoother and less political. In a risk-based program, managers are not just recipients of communication. They are communication multipliers. Supporting them is one of the highest leverage actions a security team can take. Finally, it is important to recognize that adoption is not just compliance. It is habit formation, and habits form through repetition, reminders, and reduced friction. After an update goes live, people will still make mistakes, not because they are careless, but because the old habit is strong. If your response is only to scold or to punish, you teach people to hide mistakes. A better response is to correct and reinforce while keeping the workflow stable. That might mean gentle reminders in the tools people already use, quick clarifications when patterns of confusion appear, and small improvements to reduce the most common points of friction. Over time, the change becomes the default, and communication shifts from announcement to maintenance. That is the real sign that the update was understood and adopted. People stop thinking of it as a special rule and start treating it as normal work. When security updates reach that point, the organization becomes more resilient without needing constant pressure.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.